34 minutes past the hour. Welcome back. You're watching the People's Court right here on the Daily Report, where we shine a spotlight on the national tree growing and environment conservation. Now, this comes after the first public holiday that was yesterday, where it was dedicated to Kenyans planting trees. And we have an eminent panel tonight on this side. With me, George Maringa. We invite your feedback as always. Our SMS line remains 22047, as well as on X, formerly Twitter, at TV47 News, at Muyakane, at George Maringa _. On this side, I am privileged tonight to have Mheshimiwa Titus Lote. He is the Member of Parliament for Kacheliba. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa, for coming. We also have Dr. Kalua Green, the founder of Green Africa Group. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. You can also engage them on their handles on X for your questions, your feedback as well. I will begin with you, Mheshimiwa, because the public participation came from the public holiday came from the government side. When you look at it in and of itself, what did you make of this call to Kenyans to be able to participate in tree planting to achieve the 15 billion tree cover?
Thank you, and I appreciate to be welcome to the studio.
Asante.
I go straight to your question and the thinking behind all this holiday, where I think many Kenyans took it very positively, because if you look at the behaviors of Kenyans yesterday, people did not sit in their houses. A lot of people went out to plant trees. And it was a very good response from Kenyans. I think when the cabinet met in Mombasa last week, there was a very thoughtful process about us greening this environment. And the president has been in the forefront to say that we're going to plant 15 billion trees in the 10-year tenure, expecting that the president will be in for 10 years. And so it is not a jumbled up activity. It is something that was well thought by the president and the cabinet. I think the only thing that had not been set was the rains, because if you look at the weatherman, there was a confusion whether we're going to get El Nino or not. But when it was confirmed that El Nino was going to be there, and trees, seedlings require rain, in fact, enormous amount of rain when it's starting to be planted, it was seen that it was something that was supposed to be done. So there was no much planning to it. Like many Kenyans would say, we wanted it to be planned because we cannot plan for rains. The rains are here, and we thank God because it's given us rains at the time when we will not have rains in any other year. And so the government noted that it was important that we take this advantage and ensured and guided Kenyans to start planting trees. And you can see every Kenyan was supposed to plant at least two seedlings, assuming that we are 53 million Kenyans. And so we were targeting by government to plant 100 million trees in one day. But it's not just a single day activity. I think what the minister says and the president is that within the period of 1 month, we will need to be planting trees within this short rain period, which is actually expected to go all the way to January. So for me, I think the government did it very well, because there was no other opportune time for us to plant trees. Many Kenyans are not going back to farm because people are not very sure of these rains. But we could be very sure that these rains are going to be there for a month, and that 1 month our trees will have actually shrouded. So for me, I actually say the government did the right thing, despite the people who are complaining and saying government did not plan well. We cannot plan well in an environment where El Nino is only coming here for probably a period of 2 or 3 months. Yeah.
Dr. When you fly above the Kenyan landscape, you will realize the imbalance of, the green patches and the brown patches occasioned by the lack of trees in some areas, deforestation mostly. You've been an expert in this field, and when you look at the 15 billion trees target, first of all, how achievable is it in and of itself in terms of encouraging Kenyans to be able to achieve that goal? Because at the end of the day, the end justifies the means, and the means justifies the end.
First of all, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
And thank you for making me share the scene and the sight and great opportunity to sit with Mheshimiwa Francis.
Titus.
Titus, and he's a man to watch. I really appreciate what he is doing. He's useful. He's got it up there. and he's got the style. So a great man to watch. I always admire what you're doing. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ari.
And particularly, I want to respond to your question.
Yes.
Thanking the government for the opportunity that Kenyans have had to have a day, a green day. It feels very nice. Not just about the feeling, but about the importance of taking care of our environment. It feeds us with oxygen, gives us the water that we need, all the natural capital that makes us move and do things come from the earth. And therefore, taking a break to try and do the best that we could, I think it's a great honor to the people of Kenya, and we become a leading country in Africa in as far as this is concerned, just like being the first of having a climate change council, which is led by the president. So this is something very, very honorable, and may God bless the president and everyone who is behind that, including his advisors on matters of climate change. It is possible to achieve 15 billion through the campaign of Plant Your Age, which we have been drumming, and the presidency has given it a nod, previously started by the current president when he was minister, and thereafter endorsed by the former president Kibaki, where we make it very simple. The process is not about the numbers that we are talking about every day. The process is about to push ownership so that every Kenyan drives the process knowing that it is about them, not about the government. Appreciating and receiving a reason why they must be able to participate in such processes. So it is achievable. And we have been able to demonstrate how you can actually do 18.8 billion trees in 7 years. And that is, if Kenyans, we know our average or our mean age is 19.6. You know, if every Kenyan did that over 7 years, that is 1.08 billion trees. If a corporate like Safaricom, it has 46 million customers or subscribers. If through an incentive, it must not be money. We have 46 million people with phones, and they can be able to get enticed through some discount there, some internet there, something there. And if you only take 23 million of those and plant their age, you already be doing 4-point-something billion. If KCB does the same with their 23 million customers, if in other institutions, and I've demonstrated that in one of our articles, and in 7 years, you already have 18.8 billion. It's doable. It's doable. The thing, and even more sustainable, because it can be able to grow in a better way. The president planted trees equivalent to his age, 56 trees in Konabaridi. Those trees are growing. They are doing something good. The secret is only one. Drum up. You know, I was saying the other day, the reason why a lot of Kenyans are buying Safaricom lines and getting used to that is because you look left, you look right, you find the color of Safaricom. They keep talking about it. They drum it up. They advertise it. And that is all we need, to just keep talking about it. I'm happy. That is why I would honor such a request to come here. And I would never be tired, because I know how important it is. It's not about trying to make my face popular. No, it's about getting the message as often as we can. And I really thank your media house and other media houses, the media fraternity in our country, because they keep drumming up. And that is what we must keep doing.
Thank you.
Because it is achievable.
Thank you, Dr. Before we cross over to Victor, Mheshimiwa, in Kachaliba, for instance, when you look at your constituency, at the center of this all is the people. And the reception of such initiatives and programs by the government is received, you know, the opinion is varied. When you look at some of the incentives that Dr. is talking about, do you think we are at a position that we, as a people, say, apart from embracing this, the government that we elected, or that has been elected, is also helping, considering the current economic times?
Yeah, well, I talk about Kacheliba, and this is a semi-arid land, and Kenya, we're told 85% of our land is semi-arid land.
Yeah.
And so it is rangelands, and we do not expect to see huge forests, but we can get forests in Kacheliba. I think people are taking it with a lot of enthusiasm, that we need to have our lands green again. Because one, we come from a pastoral community where we depend entirely on fodder and vegetations. With the climate change, where we see that the temperatures are increasing, we've actually seen that we're losing a lot of our pasture, and we're losing a lot of our fodder. And there's a realization even before the government rallied people to start planting trees, that in an environment where we've got trees, there is going to be a lot more fodder for a longer period of time during the dry season than in places where we do not have trees. And people are starting to conserve trees. Despite the fact that here and there, because of economies, there are people who are burning charcoal. They are the majority of the people that have also realized that trees are very beneficial. If you go to Kacheliba now, we're producing one of the best honey. And honey does not come from anything else but from trees that have got flowers. And for us to realize that instead of burning charcoal in 1 acre piece of land, we can preserve trees in 1 acre piece of land and keep 20 beehives and get much more money out of it in terms of honey than what we will have gotten on charcoal. And you know, when we burn charcoal, we cannot burn it the following year. But when we put honey, we can be able to get it again. So I think the people that are coming from where I come from, there is a lot of enthusiasm, and I think the government has given us a good boost. If you look at yesterday, the institutions where people are planting trees, and I appreciate the whole entire process that the government has thought in this exercise. Because now we got an app called the Jazamiti that developed tree seedlings to the environments that you come from. So we do not plant eucalyptus in Kacheliba, but we plant trees that can be able to survive in Kacheliba. And I think this applies to all parts of this country. So in time, I'm sure that the people living in an environment that looks like that of Kacheliba, the rangelands and the semi-arid lands, will also get to green their environment based on the trees that are available and ready to grow in this kind of environment. So one, I appreciate the government for having given us a boost, but I also appreciate the environment for having taught us that it is time that we need to preserve our environment, because climate change is real, and the people that are going to suffer more are the people that are living in rangelands, just like the people of Kacheliba.
Absolutely. And we'll be coming to Dr. to look at, how we can then segment and say perhaps this region can plant a certain species of trees. But I want us to cross over to Victor Muyakane, who is on the other side of the studio. Victor, over to you. And, we look forward to hearing what your guests have to say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, George. And you've got a very interesting panel of guests tonight, lots of insights, lots of experience, and hopefully lots of perspectives as well. On my side, I've got 2 guests as well. We've got Francis Kahuha, who is a research fellow at the University of Nairobi's Climate and Earth Sciences Department. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
We also have Njeri Burugu, who's first of all a Rotarian, and then a sustainability expert. And you also happen to be involved at a very senior level with something called MKUSA, the Students' Association. It's a fantastic thing. Karibuni sana.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I need your impressions right off the top of your head when you saw Kenyans coming out en masse across the countries, and with leaders in government spearheading this across the country. What came to your mind? Let's start with you, Njeri.
First of all, thank you for having me. I am really excited to be here. What came to my mind first was it was something that was, what do I say really? It was exciting.
First of all, did you participate in it?
I did participate in planting trees, yes I did. And
so young people out there planting trees, how did you feel?
it was something that shows that we are really moving forward as a country. And first of all, we are able to communicate to people from the grassroots level and up to the national level. Then we're able to plant trees, and we are able to respond to what the environment is teaching us, the climate change and everything that's happening around it. And it's exciting that Kenyans were able to come out and plant trees and lead us spearheading us. It was quite something.
You know, an observer pointed out that in a lot of the areas, it looked like it was, you know, it was a family affair. It was a fun thing. A lot of young people, children in school, school-going age, were involved in it. It seemed like something fun and exciting. How important is that feeling to effectiveness of such a nationwide movement?
I think the fact that we were able to move in groups, I'm a Rotarian,
yes.
And guess that we planted trees as a Rotary family. We planted trees and family. People came out with their kids. It was exciting that we are able to teach the kids now to be able to start doing it now, because we are doing it for the sustainability of the future. Exactly. So kids were able to do it, and we are passing on that baton over to our families and our children.
Absolutely, and indeed the future belongs to these children that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Francis, as a researcher, how did the research part of you, feel when you saw, first of all, the announcement that there's going to be a national day of this kind, and seeing all kinds of people coming out to do this? How did that strike you?
Indeed, thank you, Victor, for having me here. It's a pleasure. And going to your question as to the feeling yesterday when we saw everyone coming out, or rather quite a good number of people coming out to plant trees, it was a good feeling. But to begin with, tree planting, or rather environmental conservation, is a collective responsibility. So when we saw our president rather sharing laws that a certain cabinet secretary should go to a certain area, it showed the unity of purpose and, of course, the collective responsibility. Because environmental conservation is much more than tree growing. Tree growing is just part of environmental conservation. There's much more than environmental conservation than tree growing. And the idea that quite a good number of people agreed to come out is a move to the positive.
At very short notice.
Indeed. And but my big question is, among the tree seedlings that were planted yesterday, what will be the survival rate of these tree seedlings?
Precisely.
You know, and how are we going to, or rather, how can we be able to keep check that these tree seedlings are actually growing to maturity? Because the whole essence is not about the affair of, the fanfare of planting trees. It's about ensuring that this tree grows to maturity, or rather the seedlings grow to maturity. And how do we do that? Well, one of the participants, Mheshimiwa here, said that there's an app called Jazamiti, which is able to guide you on which to plant where, and when we have the indigenous trees and the exotic trees, which ones do you plant?
In fact, I want us to talk about the indigenous trees for a second. But could you share a little bit about, first of all, you've highlighted a major issue, difference between tree planting and tree growing.
Indeed.
Vastly different things in terms of approach. So what should be the approach right now? What would you say, what would you advise to be the approach going forward?
Indeed, like for example, we have this program called PERIS, which is more of like the Shamba system that we used to have years back. And this is where farmers are encouraged to plant trees on their farms, because more or less of the incentives that they get from these trees. And when they plant trees, they are allowed to harvest at some point. So the approach should be such that, one of the questions I actually had yesterday, people asking, now you're telling us to plant trees, but I live in Nairobi, for example, the urbanites.
Right.
Where do I plant these trees?
Right.
Or rather, where do I even get these seedlings? Those were some of the major questions that we were receiving. But I would talk of the willingness to plant. Is the willingness there? And even in our country, there is a behavioral, or rather the change of attitude. When the president says that we need to move to this direction, to plant trees, and in fact, he even goes ahead and tells us that when you plant trees, you are guaranteeing food security. We are talking today of increased food prices and the inflation, if we are to bring the prices of food down, then trees are central to bringing the prices of food down, because we'll be able to feed ourselves, and people will be able to get safe, nutritious, and affordable food, which meets dietary requirements. So the approach should be such that the institutions mandated to, number one, conserve. The trees that we have, we need to protect and conserve them. And then data shows that we are still yet to achieve the 10% tree cover, which is enshrined in our constitution. And even in our constitution, basic human rights, it is guaranteed that the right to a clean and healthy environment is our right.
Right.
So if we are to be in a state of balance where we have a clean and healthy environment, then we need to plant more trees.
Right.
So I think it is a step towards the right direction, and I think what happened yesterday is commendable, and I think we should move to that direction.
Right.
Thank you.
I want you to talk to me about the power of organizations such as the two that you are part of, the Rotary Club and the Students Association. Talk to me about how such organizations, I believe one of our guests spoke about decentralizing this thing and involving the corporates, involving different stakeholders of the Kenyan society. Talk to me about how these organizations can help make such a move more sustainable.
I believe such organizations, the way we move, let me just give an example. Over the weekend, we had an exercise, an environmental exercise back in Laikipia as Mkusa. Yesterday we had a similar exercise we did now the tree planting, and we also do an exercise that we did a tree planting, and we did it collectively. Now, one thing about Rotary, then, when we plant these trees, we have a digital app. That it's called the digital forest. We plant the tree, you map the tree, you're able to name the tree, then you can monitor.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah, you can monitor how that tree grows for the next 3 years. So you're able to monitor it on that app. Now, the power of these organizations is that people come from different backgrounds. They have different ideas. So when we come collectively with all this energy, we are able to synergize, and we are able to do much more better than just plant a tree and just leave it, because we come from different backgrounds, and we plant trees in Curator Forest, then we leave. And how are we able to monitor these trees? Then that's the power of having now people in different places that can take care of the trees, then others who can be able to monitor the app, and that's how collectively we do much better.
And that's a brilliant thing, and I believe organizations such as the Rotary Club and others of that mindset are actually the unsung heroes of what we do. They do this work all year round. Tell me, your organization does a lot of work with students. How do you think the students of Kenya, at whatever level, can be integrated into the policy or the plan to grow trees all across the country and boost our forest cover and boost food security and all these amazing and ambitious things that we're trying to do? How would you do that? How would you integrate our children into this?
First of all, the youths and the young people and these people in the universities, first thing, they need hope. And what they need is to see, they want a brighter future. When we come to now things like tree planting and food security that is being brought by tree planting, I believe right now we are a food deficient country. In the next few years, in 2030, somebody who is able to provide food, somebody who is able to feed Kenyans, somebody who is able to provide solutions of the problems we have now, are people who are going to be very rich. Promise the youth that they're going to work
and then
the very best.
Hope will come.
And that's where the hope is, and that's how they work hard for that.
I see. Interesting. Now, Francis, two things. We're just about to go away on a short break, but I would like us to talk a little bit about indigenous trees. There's been a major push towards, making these national movements like the day and so on, to actually put an emphasis on indigenous trees and how important that is. The other thing, of course, is a matter of the sustainability of all this as a whole, and also consider the fact that only, what, 10% of Kenyan land is arable? Is it 10 to 15% thereabout?
It is.
Yeah, so we need to talk a lot about that. And I want you to consider that and put a pin on it. But for now, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll bounce back to George, and then we'll come back to my very interesting and eminent panel of experts. Stay right here.
Welcome back. You're watching The People's Court right here on TV 47 with me, George Maringa. On this side, we are still discussing national tree growing and environment conservation. I'm still with Honorable Titus Lote. He is the MP for Kacheliba constituency. Thank you, sir, for staying with us. As well as Dr. Kalua Green, founder Green Africa Group. Thank you so much for staying with us. By the way, Dr. I still notice you have your e-mobility car. How is it, faring along?
Oh, it's doing very well. It has costed me 40 bob to get here.
40 shillings to get here? To charge it?
First Kenyan electric car, Autopax.
Just 40 shillings?
40 bob. It takes 2 shillings per kilometer. And it costs me about 460 shillings to charge for a full charge, which is 200 kilometers. What else would you want from the environment if it can give you that? So yes.
Can you tell Kenyans what the cost of the car?
Yes,
Probably
it is the cheapest electric car, which is 1.7 million Kenya shillings. Any other electric car, nothing near that. The intention, and the CEO is a 24-year-old girl. That is what I like most about it. You should see how she works very hard, and it's been thought from end to end that after 10 years, at most, the battery will have gone down by 20%, and it will also be used for, you can use it for solar storage and all that. And above all, the intention when they started, and it's a long story for more than 7 years, the same car that was driven by the president, the yellow car, is part of that family. Now we're starting to bring them in. And you can imagine the most interesting thing is the fact that it is, one, available, it is affordable. It was designed to be $10,000 when the dollar was 80 shillings. Unfortunately, now the dollar is at 150 going to 160, so it's costing 1.5 million. So everything is at any other car that is even not Kenyan as this one is, and it's been done by a partnership that is world #1. The best in the world, SGMW. So thanks for talking about it. Why do you touch such a nerve that...
Would you ride in such a car?
Why not? We all are thinking of conserving environment. And we note that the people that will be affected very quickly when climate change effects is ourselves. The people that are going to suffer is ourselves. So if we can be able to reduce our carbon print in any form possible, including riding in such cars, I think that will work. Probably what the government needs to do, and probably for us as legislators, is to see that we got such powerful cars starting to be used by government. And I think the president, when there was the climate change conference, he rode on that kind of a car. He drove it himself. And I think it was a show to every Kenyan that this is the way to go. And even yesterday, when people started discussing about high fuel costs, the environmentalists and people who care about environment, and by the way, I sit in an environment committee in Parliament, is like we started talking about why do we just want to put our heads on fuel? Why don't we think about such innovations? If we actually use 2 shillings per kilometer, who in this country cannot accept that? So let us not look at fuel as the only solution that we've got. If he was able to come here on a 2 shilling non-combustible vehicle, and I'm using probably 300 shilling per kilometer or something, 250 per kilometer gasla, why don't we just move to that direction? And I think now it is important that this topic has come as for now. We are talking about climate change, and the people that are going to suffer more is us. We can see the floods in northeastern. It is something that is very devastating. The kind of losses that we've gone into, huge. If you look at 2008, 2011, Kenya lost 1.7 trillion in terms of the floods during that period. And so if we can be all go that direction and save and reduce our carbon print, as a country we're going to benefit. One, we're going to preserve our environment, and 2, we're going to get money from what we call the carbon credits. That is the new form of money that is around. So why don't we just take advantage of that and build our economy? I'm willing to drive on that car. I want you to get willing to drive on that car. And I want every Kenyan to start getting willing to drive on that car. Probably what the government needs to do when we bring up this legislation is for government to subsidize. Instead of subsidizing fuel for everybody, subsidize the cost of this car so that every Kenyan drives it. And soon we will not need fuel. Saudi Arabia will tell them, buy, you are brothers, we will only be visiting them. And our environment will be safe.
Absolutely.
Before we lose it, we need to appreciate the fact that we need to lead by example. No, when we talk about tree growing, we need to lead by example. How many trees have you planted? How many trees?
How many did you plant yesterday?
Yesterday, at least in total, everybody who was part of the Plant Your Age campaign in a small, interesting village called Ndundune. It means a red squirrel. But because there are no longer so many squirrels, it is Ndundune, which is red love. So it was a very interesting. So it was a very interesting session with about 200 people, about 150 locals, very committed. Everyone planted trees equivalent to their age. Wow. Everyone. Oh, okay. Because we took the mean age. Everyone did that. There was a commitment for planting, for making sure that the trees grow. There was even further the preparation of the holes. It was like a fashion. You're just putting, preparing the hole with just a stick, because a 1 meter by 1 meter, 1 meter hole had already been prepared. And I like what one of your colleagues today just said earlier on, is about protecting. How many survive? Because we can talk about millions of trees, but how many will grow? And it's not the government. It's about the ownership. Yeah. And what we need to protect ourselves too. I went yesterday, Mheshimiwa, to one of the markets. It's called Kusiani Market, a very progressive small market with very willing people. And people came out in large numbers, the CFA chairman and everybody else, but the only tree seedlings that they had was 2,600. And they wondered now what we are going to plant here at the chief's camp, at the CC camp, and they have a very good CC, county commissioner, needs promotion. They're doing a very good job. But the question was, we only have this much. So we had now to start getting into our pockets to raise money so that the local MCA, who is a very great and progressive leader, gave some 2,000, somebody else 2,000, another one 10,000, so that these people can go home with some tree seedlings to go and plant. So this means there is a lot that we need to do. The start is okay, and the intention is very clear. We just need to take the true natural root of a tree and what trees train us or teach us, or what lessons we can learn. One is about the purpose the tree grows for. The second one is about the issue of pushing on and making sure that the persistence. Yeah. And the third one is the patience. We need to be patient. We need to critically see the issues and learn from what we are failing at. Yeah. I would like to see Mheshimiwa next time, in the next national tree growing day or green day, that everyone, the president does the best in State House, planting trees equivalent to his age or his village, bringing together the family members. Uko na miaka ngapi? Tunapanda yako, ninapanda yangu. Everybody at their own home. Not necessarily going to different places. Not that what we have done is wrong. It's wrong. Because it's good for optics, it's good for the international community. Now we need to bring it back home, where everyone does something on this day on their own land, because you have most influence. Yes. And I'm still talking about and finishing with the issue of leading by example. You are most influential where you are born. Yeah. And where you come from. That is where it goes deep, where people call you the name that other people don't call you. Yeah, that's absolutely the place.
Mheshimiwa, see, even as you speak to that about legislation to then make such a day, gazetted fully to be dedicated to such, and then direct funds towards it, because Mheshimiwa has talked about the unavailability of funds to be able to buy these seedlings to give to wananchi to plant in their homes.
Good. If you look at the budget for this year, the government has set aside $80 million for tree planting. And by Monday, when trees were planted, the government had within their nurseries 150 million tree seedlings. So it's unfortunate that there are those who did not get the tree seedlings, but I want to appreciate Kenyans, because Kenyans also went out to buy. So let's not be on a culture or where we are only supposed to be given free things. That is the first thing. The second thing is about these trees being sustained. If you look at Ethiopia, which is a case example for us, in 2019, Ethiopia is dedicated to plant 20 billion trees in three years. And in 3 years, This year, they actually say they completed planting 20 billion. In fact, they say they surpassed to 32 billion trees. If you look at their case, they actually went ahead and even said, let there be independent verifiers to verify that these trees are there. So they beat their chest and they are very confident that they were able to plant 32 billion trees instead of 20. So for us, we've set a target of 15, which I believe is achievable in 10 years. The only thing that I can say is a little bit progressive in regards to what we're doing is this Just Summit app, and I want Kenyans to take advantage of that. The Just Summit app is very critical, and I'll tell you, it keeps records of the trees that you plant because you can be able to put your data, and the trees, it can also take care of the trees as you update. People can be able to see, like if he's planted 8,000 trees, he can be able to update about the survival rates of these 8,000 trees. In Ethiopia, the first year, the failure rate was around 16% the first year. So they were able to keep 84% of their trees surviving in that 1 year. And then in the second year, the failure rate was around 30%. That is basically they were able to keep around 70% of their trees surviving. What we need to see is within the 5 years, will we still have those trees, or the failure rate will have increased? In this country, because of the app, I think we can be able to do better because we can be able to track our trees and be able to ensure that their trees grow. I'm only worried about legislations in terms of our livestock. Because if you look at our city, for example, even this Nairobi city or any other city, you find that there are a lot of livestock that are moving around. Livestock are even grazing in our markets. Not even grazing, they're actually browsing in our markets. And so, if we don't legislate on how to take care of the free-moving livestock in our cities, then we will have all these trees uprooted. And the other thing that I think is very important is 28% of Kenyans are living in the cities.
Yes.
The other 28, that is 72%, are living in the villages where we got land. So if the city dwellers are saying that they did not have land to plant trees, I can say that the majority of the Kenyans are living in places where they can plant trees. So I ask Kenyans to take advantage of the Just Summit app, ensure that you don't just plant trees, but also update Kenyans so that Kenyans are aware of the trees that we've planted and that you continue doing this. I'm sure when the president next year will be giving awards to Kenyans, I'm sure the persons who have planted trees, I'm not president, I don't sit in his cabinet, I don't sit in his advisors, but I'm sure because this thing is very close to the president's heart. He's going to watch, he's going to go to the app, and he's going to see the kind of people that are planted, and he's going to reward them. They're going to get honors. And this you can take to the nearest bank.
Absolutely.
You can't run away from being a president's advisor. You are a member of parliament and therefore an advisor. And I think one of the things that we need to seriously take on, and I'm sure we need more time for this, what Kenyans we need to do is to drive them. You see, you have talked about 80 million Kenya shillings having been 80 million US dollars having set to this. If you divide that times, if you multiply that by 156, you will get 1.2 billion Kenya shillings. If you divide in easy calculations 1.2 billion by 150 million seedlings is about 84 or 80 something Kenya shillings. Kenyans know that a tree seedling is supposed to be about 20, 30, 40, depending on what it is, and the size that we were seeing. So there is need for clarity, Mheshimiwa, to let people understand. People, when they understand, why, okay, this money they keep hearing about, big money. There is also confusion. The day before yesterday, we were talking of 150 million. On TV stations, sometimes it is about 110 million. That confusion leaves Kenyans not knowing, hizo 40 million zimeenda wapi times 83. Zimehama na mtu, or what has happened? So this coordination is so important. Kenyans look at what you do more than what you say. Absolutely. And I know you are in the most important committee in this country, at the parliament. And I'm not casting aspersions. I am saying the need for good communication so that people can understand why, how, and what is going wrong, what is being done. You're now talking about 80 million US dollars. Kenyans are just coming from a Miti Mingi program, which was $2 billion US. There are others who are questioning this app. Who is getting the money for carbon credits? Ninajijazia huko wengine you know, and these are things, and all this can be sorted by just good communication, continuous communication.
Yeah. Mheshimiwa, you will come back to that because at this point you need to go to Victor to pick the feedback, or rather to speak the sentiments from his panel. We see your feedback coming. Keep it coming. Use the hashtag #PeoplesCourt, #Daily Report. Victor Muyakana, you've had quite an intriguing and engaging conversation on this, and I wonder what your panelists have to say about moving the conversation forward.
Thank you, George. As that other panel was speaking, I could see different facial expressions, some nods somewhere, some movements. Talk to us. What was going through your mind as you were listening to that?
Well,
Francis.
Thank you, Victor. And I think this is an interesting conversation, which is actually happening timely. But all we are trying to speak to is what we call building the adaptive capacity of a nation. And this is in light of climate change. Because climate change is here with us, how do we build our adaptive capacity? And tree growing is one of the ways that a country can build its adaptive capacity. And when we talk of tree growing, like I said in the beginning, that is just a part of...
one part.
It's just one part of environmental conservation. There's much more to environmental conservation than tree growing. For example, pollution control. We have a problem with our liquid and solid waste management.
You did a paper on that at some point.
Sorry?
You did some research around disposing of waste.
Yes, and the paper bags and all that. So we need to start talking about circular economy, moving from linear economy to circular economy. How do we go about that? When we talk of extended producer responsibility, that the producers of certain materials, they need to be responsible up to the end use. You know, if an item is produced, say in a company or in a manufacturing company, where does it end in the tail end? So we need to have those conversations around...
Are you referring to plastics or just general goods?
Generally, what we consider as waste ourselves. Anything that you consider as waste should be treated according to, defined and known waste management practices. Going back to tree growing, and in fact the conversation, or rather the activity we had yesterday, you will find that we have many types of trees that can be grown. We talk of on-farm trees. But particularly important is what we call the multifunctional trees. These are trees which has many economic benefits. For example, fruits that gives us, trees that give us fruits, trees that we rely on for wood. And the good thing with these trees is that they relieve pressure from our forests. And when we plant these trees, we are able to get benefits from these trees. And importantly, even our energy use, our energy requirement, for example, we need energy every day in our lives to warm our houses, to cook, to move and all that. When one of our panelists was talking about the carbon and why trees are important, carbon sequestration, the removal of carbon from the atmosphere, that is very critical and important. But now we are having this discussion again at a time when we have floods in our country.
Right.
We need to ask ourselves, why is it that in this time and age we are losing lives, that we have news here with us reporting that we've lost about how many lives as us today? A certain number.
Yeah, it's quite a high number.
It is quite worrisome, and that shouldn't happen because we have like our Kenya Meteorological Department, which sole mandate is to forecast weather and tell us, or rather disseminate this information to the public. When are we going to expect rain? When are we going to expect floods? And what the risk preparedness? What is our degree of risk preparedness? So when we hear of we are losing lives because of floods, it's quite worrisome, and it shouldn't be happening in this time and age. Right. And importantly, the function of trees, what we are calling the multifunction trees, is when it comes to, say, like, for example, like flooding. In an area where we have trees, you will more or less expect less flooding because trees will act as a barrier, to these flash floods.
But at the same time, we're getting reports in different parts of the country where some leaders actually are calling on citizens to cut down particular species of trees. For example, there's areas where they're saying we don't want eucalyptus, the eucalyptoids, all of them. You know, we don't want them, they will take all of our water. In some other places, they're saying we don't want the ones they call mitimbao. In other places, they're saying we don't want this and we don't want that. Can you give us an idea? Can you offer some guidance on what exactly needs to be done in terms of from policy level that can be impacted all across the country that will actually help us to achieve what you're talking about, preparedness and also mitigation of some of these elements of climate change?
I agree with you, Victor. And I think to start with, we need to appreciate that in our country we have people or other brains which can be able to guide on such matters. For example, when a reader comes up and says that they don't want a certain type of tree in a certain area, that is a decision someone is making. If you asked them, that decision is anchored on what? Is it evidence-based? How did you arrive at saying that we don't want this tree at this particular part? And like we started by saying that we have the indigenous trees and exotic trees, or rather the imported trees that are not native to our country. So those decisions that we make, are they evidence-based? What is the science behind saying that I don't want this tree here and I don't want this tree growing on this other end? So I think the decisions that our readers make should be science-based, or rather they should be informed by data, whereby we are able to see that if you grow this particular type of tree here, these are the positive and the negative effects of this.
Actually, on that point, Mheshimiwa Lote is in the Environment Committee, if I'm not wrong. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you need to talk to this gentleman, so that and then people like him, so that the decisions that are made at that level actually represent what he's talking about, science-based, and not just hearsay, so to speak.
Correct. And I think to add on to that,
yes,
as he mentioned, it's a time that we're having these conversations. Yesterday we planted trees all over the country. Do we know what kind of trees were planted?
Correct.
Why were they planted where they were planted? I think at this time we're having these conversations. Let's have people who are educating. Let's have who are educating Kenyans now from the grassroots. Let's have people, we have, what do they call these sessions that people, barazas, that people are educated on the kind of trees that they are planting. And when I walked into the in the holding room, I walked into my fellow panelists and Mheshimiwa discussing about banditry. And then I tried to add 1+1 into this conversation, and I asked myself why we have these issues of insecurity and this banditry and cattle lustring. And it occurred to me, what happens is because we are fighting for resources, we are fighting for food, and these are things that can be solved if we're having these conversations and we are actually having the action of planting trees and sustainability.
Now,
indeed.
Let's shift gears, and just before you jump in, you've actually raised an important point. Can we shift the conversation to solutions? What can we do about this? From where you sit, let's say in my place, you were talking to the president, or you're talking to whoever is the authority in whatever area. What are your recommendations on what we can do to transform this scenario?
First of all is to make them, the policy makers in our country. First of all, we're having a lot of commercial land. From right now, we are up to Sagana. If we use the Thika Road, we are up to Sagana on commercial land. Let's have a way of the people who are making policies on how the land is distributed and the land that is being sold. Let's have a lot of forest cover and a lot of land being used to grow food, being used to plant trees that conserve the environment, being used to plant trees that bring medicinal value and whatnot. But once we continue commercializing it, we will keep mark timing. We will not move forward. There will be no growth.
Right.
That's what I'd say. And again, asking, as I mentioned again, barazas. Sure. I echo what Dr. Kalua was saying. Let it come from within us. Let us have this communication. Yesterday when people were taught to plant trees, some people didn't know what to do. They thought it's just a holiday. Some people just opted to drink or plant the wrong trees. But again, I mean, if we have this communication over and over again and have every Kenyan come from within, when we are planting these trees again, let's do it in schools. Let's have children do it, so that, you know, when a child is told to plant trees, then the parents are involved, and let it not be a one-off thing, national holiday.
Right.
Let's do it monthly,
Right.
things like that. Yeah.
And you were talking about, so yes, solutions.
Yes. And
What else can we do to make this better, to grow, to capitalize on the gains that we have as of now?
Yeah, indeed, I agree with my colleague here that moving to locally led solutions, you know, like I said, which are evidence-based. In our country, we have a pace setter, Professor Wangari Maathai, who did a good job at a global, you know, platform. Who will be the next Wangari Maathai of this country?
Right.
You know, can we see other people coming up and doing what Professor Wangari Maathai did in her own capacity? Planting trees, or rather growing trees, like I said, is just one of the many strategies. And if we all go planting and growing trees wherever, you know, we might run the risk of what we call maladaptation. This is when you are trying to bring in a solution to adapt to, you know, the effects of climate change. But then again, say for example, you are planting trees, and then these trees grows, and then you have wildfires, and then these wildfires releases a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere. You run the risk of having what we call maladaptation. So some of these solutions needs to be anchored with the varied data, or rather, we need to anchor them with proper research. And of course, having everybody embrace, because when an environmental catastrophe strikes, it affects everyone. It respects no boundaries. So we need to collectively, everybody needs to take part and take initiative and responsibility of taking care of our environment, right from tree growing to making sure that our environment is clean, to, you know, pollution control, and those kind of things. And this needs to be instilled even in early ages. In our education system, now we have the CBC.
Right.
When kids are going to school, this is what they need to be taught, so that as they grow, they appreciate and know that it is important for us to take care of our environment, because humans and environment are inseparable. And we need to strike a balance between the human systems and the natural systems.
Someone was saying CBC should be conscience-based education or curriculum, conscience-based curriculum, where the person is motivated by, internally, so to speak, motivated by their values and their belief systems. We're going to take a short break to allow our people who are watching us a little bit of time to digest all the heavy points that you people have been making. We'll be right back after this. Right. Francis, just before we went on break, you were talking about how to, the necessity of integrating tree planting with the greater environmental conservation efforts and so on. Can you give us your last point before we shift over to George and
indeed, I would end by saying that at the heart of economic development is environmental conservation. If we are to bequeath hope to our future generations and ensure that we have what we call the intra and intergenerational equity, then we need to take care of our environment. And a country cannot develop if it is not taking care of its environment. Because if you extract all resources from the environment, so what? So I think my parting shot here is it is important that even as we think of developing as an economy, we also think of sustainability in threefold, where we have the economy, the social, which is the people, and of course the environment itself.
Oh, right, right. Do you have anything to add to that?
All I'd say probably is in every project that we are doing, let us have the environment aspect in it. Whatever you're doing, in whatever way you do, if you drill boreholes, have a way that you're able to take care of the environment, so that at the end of the day we do not have projects that are able to assist people that again become a massacre. Yeah.
Oh, right, interesting. Now let's shift over to George. George, take it away.
It's quite an interesting conversation you're having on that end. I'm still with Kalua Green as well as Mheshimiwa Titus Lote, who sits in the Environment Committee and also the MP for Kachalba constituency. Gentlemen, you've been having a discourse, and you know, I could speak that you're speaking about more of funding. And Dr. Kalua Green, you're very particular about how this funding of these initiatives needs to go, or rather needs to happen.
You know, we have challenges that are historical.
Yes.
And we tend to imagine that everything, we can only lump it to Mheshimiwa of Kacheliba because he's in that committee. We need to lump everything wrong to President Ruto because he is president, he should sort out this. But some of these are most historical. Yes. Even if you brought in a new president, he will still have, in fact, more challenges than even Ruto in the way that things are today. As a country, we need to put our money where it should be. Our forests are producing a lot. It is our forests that are our mattress that sucks the water, keeps it down, and allows it to flow down the rivers. It is our forests that do that. Yeah. It is our forests that through the hydro systems, we have energy. How much of that money is plowed down to the committee that Mheshimiwa sits and works? The Ministry of Environment today is a 20 billion ministry. The Kenya Forest Service only receives 4 billion. KEFRI has less than 2 billion. Kenya Water Towers, that's supposed to coordinate the entire system, including soil conservation, has much less. In fact, the money that they have is for matters recurrent. Really, how do we expect results? I heard Rotarian, my colleague, fellow Rotarian, say that we need to grow trees in schools. How many of these schools are fenced? Children go away, the school is empty, goats and our domestic animals graze in that place. You come back and find that there are no trees that were planted. What happened to the Green Schools program, and where we launched it with the president and everybody went there? Count the number of trees that were planted. They are not there. Let's be honest. Let's be sincerely honest to ourselves. How much money does Mheshimiwa and his committee have to fence off all our forests? Are we going to rely on the World Bank? Are we going to rely on Finland and Germany and other countries? Are we going to rely on the Queen's canopy to get billions or promised or whether received to do all these things? What are the initiatives that we can do? Is it not the reason that I keep talking about a documented process where you go to plant trees, you don't even know how many will grow because people went with salt in their pockets. As you plant a tree, unaweka chumvi so that it doesn't grow, because you are better off without that tree, because you can plant potatoes, because you can plant cabbages in that place. Disconnect. And it has reached a time that we need to speak the truth to shame the devil and to deal with what has never dealt with before. We have a very nice CS, smart, able to deal with things. But what does she have in terms of pushing? We have suggested over time that we need to have forests that are gazetted. We moved from 5 water towers, we moved to 18 water towers. There are now 118 lined up for the process of making sure that things are done, but they have never even been surveyed, leave alone anything else. There is still confusion. People don't know where the boundaries are. It's not going to be her smartness and her being there and looking good that is going to help. It is us, it is the members of parliament to allocate more funds to such a process. We are having issues with the meteorological department. How will they achieve their ground truthing if they are unable to have equipment in as many places across the country to be able to monitor, to be able to bring out the actual perspective of rains, and then we blame them? I think it has reached a time that as a nation, this is where leadership counts. And leadership is not about President Ruto. Leadership is about each individual. We are faced with flooding. What are you doing with your water? What a shame that God has brought water already, and one day after, you are still taking your cows to the river to be able to feed some people 4 or 5 kilometers. We got to change our mindset. When we are talking about food, and I like what my colleague Rotarian is doing, having storage for food that you can be able to store potatoes in Nyandarua and those fields. How do we connect our trees with what we are calling climate change challenges? How can we help Kenyans to make money in this process so that they can be able to put food on their table? That's the language. And we need to connect all this tree discussion, all climate change discussion to the high cost of living and be able to speak a different language that people can be able to carry along with us. The world is not going to help us. It is us to do the right things at the right time.
Great insight you provide. Mheshimiwa, I wonder, even as you contemplate on these issues that Dr. Kalua Green is raising, in the committee, perhaps what more would you expect, even as a member, to be able to see and say, fine, whereas we are advocating for X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D needs also to come as the priority in the Environment Committee?
Well, we appreciate. I think one of the roles of the member of a committee is to ensure that all the ministries, the departments that are under that committee are actually well resourced. But we know the kind of economy that we are operating on now. We are also sure that budgeting process is a complex process. So if it was me sitting with my committee members to say how much we can give, that we can give all the monies to us to ensure that our forests are well taken care of. But then because it's a complex process where we have to also look at the performance of our economy, now you can actually tell that for every 10 shillings that we collect, 7 shillings goes to repayment of debts. So basically meaning that we're remaining with around 3 shillings only to enable us to run our development and recurrent costs of this country. So basically telling you that we do not have enough money. And so what we need to do is to maximize in terms of what we've got and to continue pushing on the priorities of this country. And the president is very clear in this. When he was giving an address yesterday, he spoke about fencing of forests. And I want to appreciate Daktari here because Daktari is very critical in terms of what we need. We can plant all these trees and then have no tree come next year. Because if we do not protect, then all these trees are going to be destroyed either by human activity or wildlife activity or any other environmental activities. So if we protect by fencing, then we can be able to say that we're doing something. So far, from the Environment Committee where I sit, we are fencing the Aberdare, we are fencing the Mau, and the Mau is a big space. This is the biggest forest that we've got. And we are fencing all many others on the little resources that we've got. And the president's commitment yesterday was opposed to that, so that if when we appear before the budget committee to say that we need to fence our forest, then we can be listened to. And that Kenyans should be willing now at this point to know that we fund our development, just like Dr. said. We do not depend on people to come and plug into our budgets. If people cannot come, donors cannot come, friends cannot come, we are supposed to fund our budgets. And I know Kenyans are making a lot of noise now in terms of how we're being taxed. But if we are able to protect our forest, we can be able to recoup that money through what we call the carbon credits. Because now the international communities, those that are polluting the environment, can come and buy that carbon sink that we've got in terms of our forest, and we can be able to recover. So let's not become so myopic in terms of how we're looking at this issue. So far, we've got 7.9 million to probably 8.3 million acres of land in our forest. We're supposed to push that to 10 million. And I think many partners, and even the process that we're doing, we want to put 3 million more acres of our land into forest. And we do that, then we're able to push from 8.3% of our forest cover to 10, which is the Constitution is saying we need to be over 10. You can see that we're doing very badly in this region. Tanzania is doing 55% of their land under forest. Uganda is doing 12.3. We are doing 8 point. Probably it's partly 8 point.
It's actually 6.4.
6.4.
The formal.
Yeah. The formal 6.4.
And that's an area of improvement in terms of communication. Yeah. So please.
Yeah, so I think what we need to do is, the reason why we've not been able to meet our forest cover, one of the main reasons is that we do not protect the seedlings that we plant. And the protection of the seedling is on fencing, including in the schools. And he asked a very important question: how many of our schools are fenced? How many of our public institutions are fenced? How many of our forests are fenced? If we can be able just to improve on the fencing, then we can be able to take care of the seedlings, to be trees, and then to our forest. So for me, I want to appreciate what Dr. is saying, and to say that within the committee where I sit, we will continue pushing for more monies. And I think because it's a president agenda, and now it becomes a Kenyan agenda, that we can all as Kenyans accept and say, let us put more monies into our forest, probably even more than our roads. And when we get good forests, then we can get more monies to even protect our roads and build more of our roads and electricity. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want us to go to the closing remarks now, Dr. Before you cross over to Victor for the closing remarks as well. I'll begin with you. You know, what you'd like to see henceforth. We've listened to what you've prescribed as what you'd like to see being done. But perhaps you can talk to us about the near future as well as the long-term vision that perhaps you'd like to see as an expert in this field.
Yeah, I would like to see a country where everything that we are doing, including conservation, makes sense to the individual.
Yeah.
I'm an eco-entrepreneur, and as an ecopreneur, I want to see things roll because they are self-driven. In the year 2005, I demonstrated to the nation that I could be able to buy a Mercedes-Benz out of growing seedlings, out of dirtifying my hands. Not that I needed a Mercedes, but I wanted to speak to the youth of this country that you can actually get a job within where you're running away from. Every Kenyan has got some piece of land somewhere. The biggest issue could be the fact that it is not divided by the family and all that. But you could borrow it from your parents. You can be able to start something, and that is why I've come up. My dream is to see green Africa villages adopted, a green market, people planting trees equivalent to their age. Mheshimiwa from Kajeliba has talked about honey. This country produces so minimal honey. We are even importing honey. Yet we can be able to get things done. Our youth, by the way, some of the things they are doing is out of desperation. They don't know what to do. No one is giving them direction. And this is where we need to really keep talking about it and appreciating that this is not a business for KFS alone. KWS also needs a lot of money because they are talking about conservation.
Yes.
And by the way, as I finish,
Yeah.
the entire forest area is only 10%. If we are running for 30%, this means we need to start talking to the people outside the space of the forest.
Absolutely.
2, we need to support the people who are in the forest, which is KWS, KFS, and all that, to do the most that they can do. We need to drop small petty issues and focus and understand and appreciate that everything one is doing is complementary.
Absolutely.
It can never be a few people's thing. And I like what my colleague said earlier on. We need to incorporate all environmental issues. When you talk about environment, you're talking about everything. Businesses need to be sustainable. We need to support our industries so that they can be able to grow. And if you look at all that, which is what Green Africa Villages brings, it's a total solution.
You get the last word, even as you perhaps give an assurance, or what you would like to be your impact in the Environment Committee.
Well, I think I will, first of all, talk to Kenyans in terms of this exercise, the whole exercise, and the vision that we need to plant 15 billion trees, so that we do not take yesterday's activities as the only activity of planting trees in this country.
Yes.
That every single day when you wake up, think about planting a tree. And you can plant a tree as by the age of your, the number of your age, so that if you're 100 years, we expect you to plant 100 trees. But yesterday we expected that every Kenyan, we wanted to plant 100 million trees, based that we are 53 million, so if every Kenyan was able to plant 2. So if you did not plant 2 trees yesterday, a minimum of 2 trees, including planting for your child, the 1-year-old child, then you miss the target. Probably you need to cover for that this week, ensure that you plant for yourself and for your children.
Yes.
That at the end of the week, when we go back to our Sunday service, you needed to actually then give an account to God and to yourself that you've planted trees. That is the number of your two, at least two.
Yes.
2
years.
I've said your age, and your age will be the best actually.
Yes.
But the minimum is you plant trees as per 2 trees per person in this country. If you cannot get land to plant, if you're living in a flat, you go to a public institution. Nairobi has got still public lands. You can even go to our forests. You get open patches, plant a tree in there, so that at least you can be able to meet that. For those that are living outside, for those that are living in places where you can get land, please plant trees. So that is my call for Kenyans, and that it's not a one-day activity, it's a continuous activity.
Yes,
the more you can plant, the better. Finally, also to actually then thank the studio and the media houses, because without the media houses, we might not get the opportunity to rally Kenyans to continue planting trees. So I want to appreciate you for having taken this as a very key discussion for tonight. And I think this TV station is picking up very well, and I think it's going to be one of the leading TV stations, because you take charge of things that are current. You're not only talking about politics. You did not invite me as a politician, but as a person who sits in an environment committee. You've invited experts, because Kenyans need to hear the expert voice, not the political voice all the time. I appreciate you, and I appreciate every Kenyan that listens to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mheshimiwa. I've been speaking to Honorable Titus Lote, the MP for Kachaliba, who also sits in the Environment Committee of the National Assembly, as well as Dr. Kalua Green. He's the founder, Green Africa Group. We could not exhaust, all these matters, but I want to throw it to Victor, of course, for the home stretch of the conversation. Victor.
Right. Thank you so much. My people, this is the time when I want to give you an opportunity to speak to Kenyans from your heart. Send a message. This is your parting shot, something you want. We've covered a lot, but if there's something you feel needs to be emphasized, or something you feel Kenyans need to understand a little better, this is your opportunity. I believe your camera will be the one that will be focusing on you, that one right over there. From your heart or from your mind, you're a researcher. Speak to Kenyans.
Thank you, Victor, and thank you for this opportunity of having me here. I would end it up, or rather sum it up by saying that indeed, now we have a regime that is conscious of our environment. Our second president, Moi, who was our second president, was very ambitious, and he had ambitious goals on how to conserve and protect our environment. This time round, we are seeing a situation whereby the current regime is highly conscious of, protecting the environment. In as much as the other discussions going on that we are doing this holiday is there because we are expecting some money, I don't know from what quarters. I think we should focus on the goal. And the goal is, when God created the earth, everything was in perfect balance. At what point did things go wrong? In as much as we are talking of population growth, we are now about 8 billion globally, and all these people are competing for resources. And the land mass where we live isn't expanding. So what is it that we are supposed to do for us to live life which is free of conflicts? Nobody should be killing the other or other, we shouldn't be scrambling for resources. I think there is adequate resources for us all, and all that is required of us is to take care of our environment and also to, in our leadership system, the governance structure, what our leaders are saying, are they leading by example? Can we emulate them? Okay? I think that is quite important. But going granular, the small things that matter, what is it in your own capacity? What is it that you can do? For example, when it comes to soil conservation, are you able to, say, for example, put up terraces in your garden or in your shamba? Can you be able to put up gabions? Can the community allow you to go and, put up an embankment in a river so that the river doesn't overflow? It is about those simple solutions. When it comes to water harvesting, for example, do you have gutters in your house? How are you taking care of surface runoff, for example? Do you have water pans in your farm, for example? It is about those small things. In your house, what sorts of energy appliances do you have? Are you able to audit and know how much energy you use? What is your total energy requirement? How much do you use? So that if we are to move towards sustainability, and I think one of the panelists talked of even the meteorological department giving information, and at times we find that this information is misaligned. And I want to imagine even during world's creation,
right.
Meteorological department was still there because during Noah's time, there were floods.
Right.
And it was predicted, they were told that you need to put everything together because there will be floods.
And nobody believed it.
So even in our case here, it's about preparedness, it's about how prepared are we, and it's about the retro things that we need to go to do the retro things that matter.
Right.
Thank you very much.
I think you've unconsciously quoted the late great Wangari Maathai.
Indeed.
What's your little thing, Jerry? There's your camera. Talk to Kenyans. From your heart, what message would you like people to go to bed with?
I think we are having a lot of conversation about climate change. We're having a lot of conversation about tree planting and everything. And all these are buzzwords. It all trickles down to collective, personal responsibility. We do not, industrialization never happened without agriculture. All this is coming back to agriculture. Let us be there, farm, feed ourselves, sell, and then we will have value addition. I think that's all we need to know. All these are buzzwords. Buzzwords. But again, let me leave you with something, and that's something maybe we will discuss the next time we come. I don't think, have you been to Karura Forest?
Yes.
How did you feel about it?
Many things, many things.
And I think that's what we all feel when we go to, and the fact that we could imagine that it was up to be grabbed sometime.
Yep.
Until Wangari Maathai.
There would have been apartments there.
Yeah. And that's what we will have that conversation next time. But thank you for having me, and see you next time. Have a good night.
All right, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Someone said that after all is said and done, sometimes all will be said and nothing will be done. Let's hope that that's not the story of our country, that's not the story of our environment, or even the efforts to conserve this very environment. They say we also borrow the future from our children, or something along those lines. Let us do what we can to make sure that this future is actually as bright as we tell our children it will be. My name is Victor Moyakane, And with me tonight on my side of the panel has been Mr. Francis Kahuha, who's a research fellow at the Earth and Climate Sciences Department of the University of Nairobi. Also Ms. Njeri Burugu, who's the Vice President or Vice Chair of MKUSA, that's a Mount Kenya University Students Association, as well as a Rotarian and a sustainability expert. We want to thank you for choosing us to inform you this evening. We do not claim to have covered every single aspect of this conversation. It's massive, it's vast, but the little that we've been able to cover, we hope you have had a useful takeaway. And from me, I wish you a good night full of God's blessings, and many thanks once again for choosing us to inform you this evening.
Absolutely. Good night.